This involved, of course, the arrival of the Russian American company otter hunting groups down the coast of California, particularly out to the Channel Islands. And there are 3 events that took place beginning in April of 1815 when Peter Chukagnak was transported along with other hunters and the Russian overseers to San Nicolas Island. The next event was that same year in the fall, September of 1815, the capture of those Russian American company hunters by Spanish soldiers at San Pedro Harbor. And in a little bit later, still in September, possibly early October, but more likely in September, the unfortunate torture and murder of Peter Chukagnak in the pueblo of Los Angeles. This image that you're seeing here is of San Nicolas Island. This is a location where Chukagnak and his fellow otter hunters from Kodiak Island primarily would have visited San Nicolas Island to do otter hunting at the behest of the Russian American company. This image here shows the map of Southern California, Santa Barbara and Los Angeles, of course, and also San Pedro Bay and the harbor of San Pedro and its relative position to San Nicolas Island. I've drawn a map here, or an arrow here, to show you a straightforward route from San Nicolas Island, and this would have been the best route possible, but the otter hunters who went from San Nicolas Island to San Pedro may have staged their journey going first to Santa Barbara Island and then to Santa Catalina before they went to San Pedro. And in fact, we know they did hunting on Catalina Island as well. This map will show you that there were many different Native American groups on the coast. This is from the mid-19th century, but even in the early 19th century, this was the relative grouping of Native speaking Chumash in the Ventura and Santa Barbara, San Luis Obispo County areas, and also on the Channel Islands. The southern Channel Islands were inhabited by Uto-Aztecan Takic speaking groups, and out on the Channel Islands they had a subdialect island, Gabrielino Fernandino. So this shows you that the Native Alaskans would have encountered different languages, different native groups. They shared many cultural characteristics. Both the Chumash and the Gabrielino also had the plank canoes, the tomals in the Chumash territory, Teots in the Gabrielino territory, but their languages were different, so it wasn't all one homogeneous group. The sea otters, of course, were the lure. The Spanish controlled the coast of California at that time, and they forbade, of course, foreign entities like the Russian American Company to hunt sea otters on the coast. But the Russian American Company hunting groups found that it was easier for them to hunt a sea otter on the islands off of the coast because Spain didn't have that many ships that they could use to patrol those waters and protect the natural resources that they were claiming belonged to Spain. So the sea otters were greatly prized. Their fur, of course, was referred to as soft gold, and the Russian American Company hunters, the native Alaskans, and primarily from Kodiak Island, like this native Alaskan hunter here at St. Paul, were superb in terms of their ability to paddle kayaks, or baidarkas as the Russians called them, on the waters. Here this native Alaskan from this wonderful illustration by Louis Choris is wearing the traditional seal gut waterproof parka called a kamlaika. He had the bentwood hat, likely with walrus whiskers on the top to disguise his profile. And they would hunt from the ocean, from these kayaks or baidarkas very effectively. So this image shows another map. Sorry, I use a lot of maps to tell the tale, but Russian America with Kodiak Island off the coast, Sitka, which was called Novo Arkhangelsk at the time, and Fort Ross, which of course was founded 1812, and the Channel Islands. So the Native Alaskan hunters were taken on ships, Russian American company ships, and or American ships. The forester and the peddler were assisting the Russian American company in 1814 and 1815, and they brought these hunters from Kodiak Island and Novo-Arkhangels down the coast to Fort Ross and to hunt in the Channel Islands and also in Baja California. And of course, this is another historical illustration showing the otter hunters in their bidarkas or canoes. Some canoes were single hatched, others were triple hatched, and you can see the hunters here, both in the single hatch and the triple hatch, were launching spears or darts using atlatls or spear throwers. This image shows a map of Kodiak Island as it may have appeared, with the village locations as it may have appeared in 1813. And you can see within the red oval down at the bottom was the village of Chukagnak. We have learned from Ivan Kiglaya's testimony that this is the village where Chukagnak was born, baptized as Peter, when he received the Orthodox faith. And Ivan Kiglaya, whose testimony was so crucial about learning the details of Chukagnak's story, lived in the village Kashkak, just below Chukagnak on this map. This is a contemporary illustration of the Russian American company brig, the Illuminate. This was actually an American brig formerly called the Lydia, sold by Captain James Bennett to the Russian American company to Alexander Baranov in 1813. This vessel was crucial. It was used by the Russian American company with an American sea captain, William Wadsworth, to transport the Russian American overseers and the Native Alaskan hunters down the coast of California to both Fort Ross and to the Channel Islands. The Illuminate, of course, wrecked at Point Arena in 1820, and some of that cargo was retrieved. This image shows an 1848 map of Russian map of Southern California with the Channel Islands, and I've put a red circle, San Nicolas Island off the coast there. They had initially referred to San Nicolas Island as Ilmen, very much like the ship, the Illuminate, but later on, and in this map, referred to it as San Nicolas Island. And it turned out this was an ideal location for them to take otter hunting crews because it was the furthest off the coast of Southern California. The Spanish did not get out there frequently, so the Russians figured that this was the best place to deposit crews. Often they would deposit their hunters about spring and then pick them up later in the fall. And in some cases, the otter hunter groups did not stay at one island. And the group that Chukagnak was affiliated with did in fact go to both Santa Rosa Island in the Chumash, 4 northern islands, and also to Santa Catalina before it ventured to San Pedro near Los Angeles. So in April of 1815, there was a Russian overseer, Boris Tarasov. He was put in charge of the otter hunting group that Chukagnak was associated with, as well as Ivan Kiglaya. This image shows Corral Harbor on San Nicolas Island. Chukagnak and all the other Kodiak Island otter hunters with the Russian American company would have seen this, would have been paddling through this harbor in order to get to San Nicolas and start their otter hunting. This was the best place, the calmest place. The large sailing ship, the Illuminate, the forester, the peddler would have anchored off the coast here, not inside this harbor. It was too narrow. And then they would send smaller vessels to take the hunters inland. This also happens to be where the Tule Creek village site was located, the native islanders who we refer to as the Nicoleño. And of course, that was not their native name, but they had a large historic village site and that was located quite near this harbor. So what we know about the capture of Boris Tarasov's group, this took place in September 1815. Boris Tarasov was dropped off with his hunters on San Nicolas Island. They did not stay there. As I mentioned, that particular group ended up going to Santa Rosa Island and Catalina Island to hunt because the otter hunting was not good on San Nicolas Island in 1815. Prior to that, the Russian American Company had dropped off a group in 1814. They were doing otter hunting. There was a confrontation between the native islanders and one of the native Alaskans. We don't know his name or what village he was from, but he was killed by the native Nicoleño. And in retribution, the rest of the otter hunters literally killed nearly all the adult males in the group. There was a massacre on the island. And in fact, this is why we have some of these documents, because this was reported to the Russian American Company chief manager, Alexander Baranov, as well as Leonte Hagemeister and Ivan Kuskov. They were all aware of the massacre that took place. And this is part of the suite of Russian documents, Russian American Company documents, that we had translated into English. So this is how we know about events that took place on San Nicolas Island. And the group in 1815 did involve Peter Chukagnak. The group ended up paddling to San Pedro Harbor, and according to Ivan Kiglay's testimony, and I will get into more of that in detail a little bit later on, they had come to San Pedro not to hunt, but because the weather had been poor, it was cold, and Boris Tarasov's bidarka had sprung a leak, so they were there to try to repair the bidarka. But when they were on the coast at San Pedro Harbor near Los Angeles, they were accosted at first by Spanish soldiers who said, that there had been 2 escaped Alaskan native hunters from San Clemente Island, and if Boris Tarasov and his group would wait a day or 2, they would bring those escaped otter hunters to them, and then they would allow them to leave the coast. But the group waited several days, and it turned out something like 20 Spanish soldiers showed up and captured Boris Tarasov and the group, including Chukagnak and his colleague Kiglaya. The hunters' possessions were seized, the men were bound and marched to Los Angeles, but in doing all of that, a number of them sustained injuries. In fact, Chukagnak had his head cut with an axe, so he was in pretty bad shape, excuse me, at that point. This image here shows Los Angeles Plaza about 1847. So later than 1815, but this is somewhat what this scene would have been. And this is actually the church here. The Plaza Church is what they referred to as Mission San Pedro. It was an asistencia or submission associated with Mission San Gabriel, which was 3 leagues away. And this is where the guardhouse was, the jail was, very close proximity to the church. So this is what they referred to as Mission San Pedro. So they were taken to jail. The native Alaskans were taken into the jail. Boris Tarasov, according to Kiglaya's testimony, was taken to the guardhouse. This image here shows Timms Point at San Pedro Harbor, near Los Angeles, 1875, so much later than 1815. But this is the location, the geographic location where Boris Tarasov and his group came ashore. There wouldn't have been this many buildings here. There may have been a single structure there, a trading post, but this gives you an image with a small Dead Man's Island just off the shore of where Peter Chukagnak and his colleagues would have paddled from Santa Catalina Island again in 1815. This image from 1849, the first map done by EOC Ord of Los Angeles, within the red oval, you can see that was the area of the original pueblo. That would have been where the guardhouse was, the jail, where Chukagnak and the rest of the Kodiak Islanders were taken. And this, much of this is still present. The church is still present in Los Angeles, the Plaza Church called La Placita. But this is the location where they were taken, and we know this from Spanish notes, correspondence from the commissioner Guillermo Cota, and we will go over that in a little bit. So in the jail, Peter Chukagnak and Ivan Kiglaya were confronted by a priest and some Indians, some baptized Indians. They were ordered to renounce their Orthodox religion and accept Catholicism, but they all refused. They said we had already accepted the Christian faith a long time ago in Kodiak, and they did not wish to accept another faith. This happened twice. First when they were initially captured, and then later that night. The following morning. And this was after all of the native Alaskans and Boris Tarasov were sent away to Mission Santa Barbara. Chukagnak and Kiglaya were left in place. Chukagnak and Kiglaya were led out of the jail. Chukagnak was tortured and killed, and Kiglaya was spared. Apparently, there was a priest there and native Indians who were doing this deed, these horrible deeds, and the priest received a message written on a piece of paper, and he had that message buried with Chukagnak, and Kiglaya was spared and let go and sent to Mission Santa Barbara. This is an image of the Los Angeles Plaza Church and the cemetery just to the left side of the church, 1865. This La Placita Plaza Church is still in place, and just beyond it, to the right of the church, was where the original Pueblo location was established, and the guardhouse and the jail where the Native Alaskans and Boris Tarasov were sequestered. So two important document sets helped us to understand the exact geographic location, Los Angeles, as opposed to anywhere else in California where these activities took place. I've talked about the testimony of Ivan Kiglaya, and I will discuss that a bit after this document set, but these are Spanish letters, correspondence that took place 1815 in September between Jose de la Guerra to Governor Pablo Vicente de Sola, and also between Guillermo Cota, who was a commissioner in Los Angeles, and he was sending notes to Commandant Jose de la Guerra in Santa Barbara. And it turns out these clarify exactly where the activities took place. They're talking about the number of men who were captured, and on September 19th, Guillermo Cota sent a note to Jose de la Guerra saying that he had arrested Russian Indians, including Boris, taken control of their kayaks, put them in custody, and he was awaiting orders. And Guillermo Cota also said that they had declared they had hunted 950 sea otters that were killed during the season that they were there. And the further note that's really important, the Russian Indians were kept as prisoners in the jail. Boris was in the guardhouse, and Boris was also aided in his house. In other words, Guillermo Cota was commissioner in Los Angeles, and he hosted Boris Tarasov as a foreign merchant of sorts in his own home in Los Angeles. So the Native Alaskans, part of the Russian American company, including Chukagnak and Kiglaya, were kept in the jail in Los Angeles, not anywhere else. And further Spanish documentation from Jose de la Guerra to Governor Sola, saying that he was sending the people who had been arrested, including Boris Tarasov, under guard to Monterey. So he was sending, at this time, this is October 5th, he was sending them away from Santa Barbara, where they had initially been sent, and he was sending them to Monterey. But the important note was that 2 individuals that are missing remained in town, one wounded and the other taking care of him. So he was clearly referencing Chukagnak and Kiglaya, and they were still in town in the pueblo of Los Angeles. And these Spanish documents, translations come from Michael Mathis and Glenn Ferris and Lynn Kalani. So we're very grateful to them for translating all of these Spanish documents, very relevant to this story. This is an image from Santa Barbara, about 1839. The mission is in the middle of the right-hand side up on the hill. This is somewhat what Santa Barbara would have looked like, not as well developed as Los Angeles. There would have been fewer homes, but certainly this was where Boris Tarasov and the other Russian Alaskan hunters came to stay for a short while before they were sent to Monterey. So as it turned out, Ivan Kiglaya, who had witnessed the torture and murder of Peter Chukagnak, he was sent to Santa Barbara, as I mentioned, after Chukagnak was buried. And there he and other escapees, and not including the ones who he had originally come to the coast with because they'd already been sent to Monterey, but he made a pact with others at Santa Barbara, other Native Alaskan hunters, to escape and return to Fort Ross. And what he did was he collaborated with a colleague, Philip Atasha, who was also from Chukagnak, where Peter Chukagnak was born, and they stole a canoe and paddled back from Santa Barbara coast to San Pedro, and then staged their journey paddling out to Catalina Island, Santa Barbara Island. They returned to San Nicolas Island. And as it turned out, and this was unusual, this welcome on the island, according to Kiglaya, the native people on San Nicolas Island welcomed their arrival and their stay on the island. And it turned out that Kiglaya and Atasha stayed there for nearly a year and a half. Philip Atasha stated only a year. He died after that time, but they hunted cormorants, and this is an image of a cormorant. They used the meat for food and the skins for clothing for themselves and the Indians on the island. So they, and this is an image of how they paddled to get back out to San Nicolas Island. And this is important because Ivan Kiglaya was eventually picked up by the illuminate in 1819, so 4 years after he had been captured in San Pedro and witnessed the torture and murder of Chukagnak. And he was able to go back to Fort Ross on the ship, the illuminate. And this is where he told the story. Kiglaya was questioned at Fort Ross. He was interviewed by a couple of chiefs there, Alaskan Native chiefs, and he described that the party led by Tarasov and 15 canoes ended up leaving San Nicolas Island, where they'd been dropped off, and going to San Pedro, and there the Spanish soldiers outnumbered and captured the party. He also continued to describe that their possessions were seized. They were confronted by the missionaries at least twice and ordered to renounce their Orthodox faith. And both of them refused. Both Kiglaya and Chukagnak refused, again saying, we have already accepted the Christian faith at Kodiak. And of course, this was where Chukagnak was tortured and killed, and Kiglaya was spared and sent to Santa Barbara. So combining these Spanish documents and Kiglaya's testimony confirmed the events happened in San Pedro near Los Angeles, not in Northern California. The results of the translation of these Russian and Spanish documents show that there was a murder involving a Russian American Company hunting group on San Nicolas Island in 1814, triggered by the murder of an Alaskan Native hunter by the Nicoleno. Another Russian American Company hunting group returned to San Nicolas Island in 1815, but left because the hunting was poor. While in San Pedro near Los Angeles, the hunters and Russian Boris Tarasov were captured by the Spanish, and 2 of the otter hunters were detained in the jail while the others were sent to Mission Santa Barbara. While in Los Angeles, Peter Chukagnak was tortured and murdered for refusing to renounce his Orthodox faith and accept Catholicism, and Ivan Kiglaya was sent to Mission Santa Barbara. And then two hunters, Ivan Kiglaya and Philip Atasha, escaped and returned to San Nicolas Island. They lived there from about 1817 to 1819, waiting for a ship to pick them up. Kiglaya was picked up, as I mentioned, in 1819, brought to Fort Ross. He told the story of Chukagnak's torment and death in Los Angeles, and his testimony is the only eyewitness account of the killing of Chukagnak under the direction of a priest in Los Angeles. We don't know that priest's name. Peter Chukagnak was later canonized by the Orthodox Church in 1980 and became St. Peter the Aleut. So the testimony of Ivan Kiglaya and the Spanish records preserve the truth of St. Peter's sacrifice. This is a reminder that faith, even under trial, transcends time and place. And I am now happy to address any questions you might have from these historical documents and records. And let me know how we might go about doing that. And I think I will stop the share so I can see you, or perhaps see a moderator and see how we may do that. And I apologize that I was speaking too quickly. I didn't monitor the chat while I was doing the presentation, so my apologies. I can't hear any questions, so I guess if the moderator wants to, I guess you can type the questions. That will work.
Father George from Monterey, California. I have heard over the years that Peter the Aleut's fingers were chopped off during the so-called Inquisition. Is there any truth to that legend? Any facts to substantiate that? Any comments on that?
Could you repeat the question?
Okay, question from Father George. I had heard over the years that the Peter and the Aleut, yes, that is the testimony. I didn't want to go into graphic details. Yes, Peter, the Aleut's fingers were cut off according to Ivan Kiglaya, and there were other graphic details, but I thought it best not to go over those graphic details in a Zoom session. If anyone wants to read Kiglaya's exact testimony, you are welcome and able to access the research article that my colleagues and I, Glenn Ferris, Steve Schwartz, Irina Vladia Linder, and Boris Streliak published in 2014. I'm getting my dates wrong. It's called Murder, Massacre, and Mayhem on the California Coast. We have a complete transcription in English of Kiglaya's testimony, and that will give you the graphic description of the torment that St. Peter endured. So yes, just Google search Murder, Massacre, and Mayhem on the California Coast, and you will be able to access that article. Also, James Gibson, Alexei Eastman, Valery Tishkov have published a wonderful 2-volume set, extensive set of translations of Russian American company documents. Kiglaya's testimony is also in that volume set. So, and we owe them a debt of gratitude. James Gibson, Alexei Eastman, and Valery Tishkov initially published this account and others in 2005 in Russian. And so they were the first ones to locate this important document.
I wanted to add to that the copy, if you would like a copy of that called Mayhem and Massacre, and there's a longer title, I would be happy to send it to you. We want everyone to have it, and put your name on a piece of paper in the back. That would be the best thing to do.
Okay, more questions. Could Dr. Morris talk about the reliability of Chukagnak?
Again, I really apologize if I was speaking too fast for the translators. I was mindful of the time frame. I wanted to get in all the information I could within the time frame, but I do apologize for speaking too quickly and not monitoring the chat.
I wonder if Dr. Morris could talk about the reliability of Chugagnak's testimony. Usually in both religious purposes and secular, we have 2 or 3 witnesses for anything important, so I'm just curious how she might comment on his, he's an adventurer, so I'm just curious how much we should put stock in his words.
Okay, next question. Did I speak to the reliability of Chugagnak's testimony? We usually have several witnesses for such things. We have the one witness statement. He was an eyewitness. There are no other eyewitness accounts, but we think combining Chugagnak's testimony with the Spanish documents information showing that the 2 of them were left in the jail in Los Angeles while the rest of the Native Alaskans and Boris Tarasov were sent to Mission Santa Barbara corroborates much of the details about the geographic location. Chugagnak did not return to go to Mission Santa Barbara, so we know he died in Los Angeles, but we do not have additional witness testimony. So no, that's one thing would have been nice to have, but Chugagnak was the only witness. So great question. Thank you for that.
Why don't you stand up and make sure he gets your attention?
Why was the Russian American company hunting so far south and not in the Pacific Northwest? Was there something preventing them from hunting farther north?
So next question, why was the Russian American company hunting so far south and not in the Pacific Northwest? Another great question. Well, they had hunted extensively in the Pacific Northwest. In fact, they were so good at hunting otters and seals and other fur-bearing animals that they were running out of fur-bearing animals to hunt. So they had to go further and further south to find sea otters who had not been overhunted, and that was the draw.
Okay, we can do one more question if there is one. Stand up, please, and just go ahead.
Do we have any idea where he might have been buried?
Okay, waiting for one more question.
Yeah, now I was curious about the note as well, if that was anything we've ever located any of that.
No.
Okay, do we have an idea where St. Peter may have been buried? And did we locate the note that was buried with him? I really wish we knew where that burial was, and particularly the note. I'm assuming it was a Spanish text, and apparently the note was buried with St. Peter, and we do not know that location. It's going to be somewhere in Los Angeles, quite near, I imagine, the old pueblo. Obviously now much of that is built up, paved over, so we may never know, but it doesn't hurt to keep that in mind. And certainly it would be wonderful to find a copy of the Spanish text that was sent to this priest at that time, but we haven't located a copy of that Spanish text. But that's another great question, and a mystery to be solved in both cases, the burial location and the note. Thank you so much. I sure appreciate it. Again, it was a privilege and an honor to speak with you all. Again, my apologies for speaking too fast, but we covered a lot of ground, and I sure appreciate your questions, and I hope you have a wonderful field trip to Fort Ross. I gather you're going tomorrow. So take good care, and thank you so much.